My sister called saying your husband is in surgery, but he was sitting next to me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Bryn Halston. Last October, I was sitting on the couch with my husband, Kate Mercer. We were watching an old TV show and relaxing after a long day. His arm was around me, and everything felt normal. Calm. Safe. Then my phone started ringing. I saw my sister's name on the screen. Leora Dane. It was late, so I answered right away. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Bryn, she said, Kate is in surgery. It's serious. You need to come to St. Alder's Hospital right now. My heart stopped. I turned slowly and looked at Cade. He was sitting next to me, confused by my expression. He asked, "What's wrong?" I put the phone on speaker. Leora kept talking, saying doctors were working on him and that I needed to hurry. Cade shook his head. What is she talking about? I felt cold all over. My sister sounded terrified. But my husband was right there, alive and perfectly fine. I asked her who called her. She said a nurse had called from Cade's emergency contact list. That made no sense. I was his emergency contact. Not her. Cade tried to laugh it off and said it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone with the same name. Maybe confusion at the hospital. But something inside me didn't believe that. Leora was not someone who made simple mistakes. And the fear in her voice sounded real. I looked at my husband again. He looked nervous now, not just confused. In that quiet moment, sitting beside the man who was supposedly fighting for his life in surgery, I felt something shift inside me. Nothing in my life felt safe anymore. Cade and I had shared a life for 7 years. From the outside, everything looked steady and strong. We paid our bills on time, hosted small dinners, and planned quiet vacations. Friends often said we were dependable, the kind of pair others hoped to become. There were no loud arguments, no doors slammed in anger, no dramatic scenes. We handled problems calmly and moved forward together. At least, that is what I believed. My relationship with my sister, Leora, had always been different. Growing up, she often compared herself to me. She said I had the easier path, that things came naturally to me. I tried to help her whenever I could, offering advice and support. Still, there was always tension beneath the surface. She drifted from one job to another, from one serious relationship to the next, searching for something that never seemed to last. Over the years, she grew especially close to Cade. She laughed a little louder at his jokes. She found reasons to stand near him during family gatherings. When they hugged, it sometimes lasted a second longer than it should have. I noticed it, but I pushed the feeling aside. I told myself I was imagining things. They were family. There was nothing wrong with warmth. That evening, after the strange phone call, he sat across from me at the kitchen counter. He poured himself a drink and acted as if everything were normal. His expression stayed even, almost too even. He spoke in a calm voice, saying there had to be some confusion. I studied his face carefully. His movements were controlled, measured. A quiet thought rose inside me, slow and steady. This was not confusion. This was something else. I pressed the speaker button so every word could be heard clearly. My voice stayed steady, even though my hands felt cold. Leora, I asked slowly, which medical center are you talking about? St. Alder's, she answered without hesitation. Her breathing sounded uneven. They said there's serious internal bleeding. He passed out at work. Doctors rushed him in. Across the room, Cade stared at me. His lips moved silently. What is she saying? I forced myself to stay calm. Who contacted you? A nurse, she replied. She said she got my number from his emergency contact information. The color drained from his face. I watched it happen. His jaw tightened, and he swallowed hard. There was no reason for anyone at any clinic to reach out to my sister. I handled all forms, paperwork, appointments. Every document listed my name, my number. Always mine. I felt a strange stillness settle over me. If someone truly reached out to her, then something had been changed. Quietly. Recently. Or maybe there had never been a call at all. I studied his expression. The confusion he showed earlier was gone. In its place was something sharper. Calculation. I asked her one more question. Did they give you details? A doctor's name? She hesitated for half a second before answering. No. Everything happened fast. That pause echoed loudly in my mind. He stood up and paced toward the kitchen window, running a hand through his hair. He avoided looking directly at me now. The pieces did not fit together. A sudden collapse. A mysterious call. Contact information that should not exist. Unless this was not about illness. Unless there was a part of his life I had never seen. In that moment, a new possibility formed, heavy and dark. Maybe the person I married was only one version of him. And somewhere beyond my reach, another version had already begun. When my sister finally ended the conversation, silence filled the room. Kate exhaled slowly and tried to brush everything aside. He said it had to be some kind of joke. Maybe someone trying to stir trouble. He even suggested that she often overreacted and turned small things into chaos. His words sounded smooth, but there was tension underneath them. I noticed how his fingers tapped against the counter, how he avoided holding eye contact for too long. Something in his posture felt guarded. We moved through the rest of the evening in uneasy quiet. He kept the television on, pretending nothing unusual had happened. I responded when spoken to, but my thoughts were racing. The strange details would not leave my mind. Hours later, he went upstairs to wash up. I heard the water running. Without allowing myself time to second guess, I walked into the hallway and picked up his briefcase from the chair where he had left it. I told myself I was only looking for reassurance. Something simple that would prove this was all nonsense. I unzipped the main section first. Papers. A planner. Nothing unusual. Then I noticed a smaller compartment along the side, one I had never opened before. The zipper felt stiff, like it had not been used often in front of me. I pulled it open. Inside, resting beneath a stack of folded receipts, was a device I did not recognize. Slim. Dark. Powered on. Before I could fully process what I was seeing, the screen lit up. It vibrated softly in my hand. A message notification appeared. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the unfamiliar number flashing across the display. This was not a spare for work. This was something hidden. And it had just come to life. The screen opened without a password. No security. No barrier. Almost as if it was meant to be accessed quickly. I scrolled through the inbox. The names were not business contacts. There were no group threads about meetings or deadlines. Every message came from one person. Leora. Her words filled the screen in long conversations stretching back months. Not casual chats. Not family updates. These were careful exchanges, written with purpose. There were confirmations for flights under different dates. Receipts for weekend stays at places I had never heard of. Notes about setting aside cash in small amounts. They had planned everything step by step. My chest tightened as I kept reading. One message stood out more than the rest. It read, "After she finds out, we won't have to pretend anymore." Another followed minutes later. "When she believes you're injured, she'll lose focus. That's when we act." I froze. Act how? Leave? Take something? Disappear? The conversation continued with details about timing and distraction. They discussed waiting for the right moment, making sure I would not suspect anything until it was too late. This was not a sudden mistake or emotional impulse. This was organized. Patient. Calculated. The earlier hospital story was never about concern. It was a rehearsal. They wanted to see how I would respond under pressure. Whether I would rush out without thinking. Whether I would question anything. I felt a wave of nausea rise as realization settled in. They were measuring my reaction. Testing my trust. Studying my weakness. Everything written there proved one thing clearly. There was a hidden partnership between them that had nothing to do with family loyalty. The person I trusted most and the sister I defended for years had created something behind my back. And tonight was only the beginning of whatever they were preparing to do next. I placed the device back exactly where I found it and returned to the living room before he finished upstairs. My face stayed calm. My voice steady. I asked no questions. Inside, everything had shifted. Instead of reacting, I chose patience. If there was more hidden beneath the surface, I needed proof. Quiet proof. The next morning, while he was gone, I logged into our financial records. I reviewed every statement from the past year. At first glance, nothing looked unusual. Payments were made. Utilities cleared. Mortgage steady. Then I noticed a pattern. Small amounts moved out every few weeks. Not large enough to trigger alerts. Not dramatic enough to draw attention. 50 here. 200 there. Always labeled vaguely. Always spaced out. When added together, the total was not small at all. I traced the transfers carefully. They led to another account I had never seen before. It carried his name alone. Authorized access included one additional person. Leora Dane. My breathing slowed as the truth arranged itself in front of me. This was not only betrayal of the heart. It was preparation. Structure. Planning with intent. They were building a safety net for themselves while keeping me unaware. The earlier emergency story suddenly made perfect sense. If I had rushed out in panic, the house would have been empty. Time alone. Opportunity without interruption. They needed me distracted. Emotional. Absent. Every detail pointed toward one conclusion. They were preparing to leave. And they intended to take what they could before I realized anything was missing. I closed the laptop carefully and sat still for a long moment. This was not chaos. This was strategy. Fear would have been easy. Anger would have been natural. But neither would protect me. So I chose discipline. The following afternoon, once he left for the office, I drove across town to a law firm recommended years ago by a colleague. I requested a private consultation and explained everything with clear facts, no emotion. Hidden transfers. Secret communication. Coordinated deception. The attorney listened carefully and took notes. He advised immediate protective action. Not confrontation. Not threats. Documentation and control. First, I secured my personal inheritance. Funds my grandmother left me had always remained separate, but accessible through shared planning. That access ended that day. The money was transferred into a safeguarded trust under my birth name, unreachable without my direct authorization. Next, we addressed the shared finances. Based on suspicious activity, I was within my rights to request a temporary freeze. Legal paperwork was filed citing potential misappropriation. By evening, restrictions were placed. No withdrawals. No silent transfers. No sudden disappearances of cash. Everything was handled through proper channels. Clean. Official. Quiet. I returned home before he did. Dinner was prepared as usual. Conversation stayed light. I watched him carefully without letting my expression change. He believed I knew nothing. That belief was my advantage. Days passed. I monitored activity through updated alerts connected only to me. Attempts were made to access funds. They failed. I said nothing. If they were expecting panic, they would receive patience. If they were waiting for weakness, they would face preparation. I did not need to shout or accuse. The groundwork was already shifting beneath their feet. Let them think their strategy was flawless. I was ready for the next move. 3 nights passed quietly until the phone rang late. The caller ID displayed Leora's name again. Her voice was frantic, panicked beyond reason. Bryn. Cade, he's not responding. He's barely breathing. I stayed calm. My mind was sharper than ever. Cade was supposedly tied up at work, hours away from the chaos she described. I didn't follow her lead. I didn't rush to a hospital that didn't exist. Instead, I drove in silence, every turn deliberate, every thought measured. When I arrived at our street, the house looked normal at first glance. But the front door was ajar. My stomach twisted. Inside, the living room told the story immediately. Drawers pulled open, contents scattered. Closets left gaping and nearly emptied. They had come for more than just money, they had tried to strip the place bare, expecting me to be gone. The kitchen safe had been tampered with. Cabinets that usually stayed locked were unlocked, emptied of small valuables. I stepped inside fully, assessing every detail. Not a single item of true value remained vulnerable. Every precaution I had taken was effective. Every layer of protection intact. I allowed myself a quiet, controlled exhale. The attempt had been bold, daring, and poorly timed. They thought they could manipulate fear, use shock to cover their escape. But their plan collided with preparation. No chaos. No drama. Only evidence of failure. They had underestimated my patience. They had overestimated their control. And when I turned toward the empty hallway, I realized that the real power had quietly shifted. They had tried to run, but the path was blocked, not by doors, not by locks, but by careful planning. There was nothing left for them to claim. And that night, the house was mine again, untouched, silent, and secure. I remained silent. No yelling. No confrontation. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. The first call I made was to my attorney. I explained the attempted theft and the staged emergency. He immediately guided me through the next steps, ensuring the law would protect me completely. Next, I contacted the authorities. Police arrived swiftly, taking detailed statements. They listened closely, clearly noting the evidence of planning, deception, and intent to defraud. I handed over copies of messages, account records, and proof of coordinated activity. Within hours, the officers understood the situation fully. What they described sounded unreal, but the documentation left no doubt, deliberately transferring funds, creating false emergencies, and plotting to take assets, all were criminal offenses. As the sun dipped, headlights and flashing sirens appeared in the driveway. Cade pulled into the driveway, expecting normalcy. Instead, he was greeted by law enforcement already on site. Leora arrived shortly after, breathless and shocked. Neither of them could comprehend the calm in my expression. My stillness betrayed no fear, no panic, no uncertainty. The shock in their eyes was a mirror of the truth I had known all along. I walked slowly through the house, watching their realization unfold. Every glance, every tremor in their voices, confirmed the depth of their miscalculation. The magnitude of their failure was clear. In that moment, I understood something profound: betrayal could be neutralized. Deception could be dismantled. Their faces reflected the truth they could no longer deny. And with that understanding, I made a choice. I ended the ties. Cade. Leora. Their plans. Their lies. Everything that had threatened my life, my peace, and my future, gone. I didn't look back. From that night forward, I controlled the story, the finances, the house, and my life. They had tried to destroy me. Instead, they had vanished from my world completely. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Paperwork signed. Hearings held. Everything finalized before either of them could react properly. Cade walked away empty-handed. All the funds, accounts, and assets he believed were hidden or under his control were now firmly out of reach. No loopholes. No surprises. Leora faced consequences too. Losing me as a sister was just the beginning. All the trust she had relied on, every excuse she had counted on, vanished instantly. Years of manipulation meant nothing. Friends and neighbors asked if I regretted waiting, if I should have confronted them the moment I discovered the truth. I smiled quietly. Not once. Silence had been my greatest ally. Waiting allowed me to understand the full scope of their intentions. It revealed their patterns, their weakness, and the moments I could act most effectively. I finally realized how powerful clarity could be. When emotions are contained, when planning is precise, control is inevitable. The evening of that first phone call, when my sister spoke of Cade being in surgery while he sat in the same room, had marked a turning point. It was the moment innocence ended. From that night on, I moved with purpose. Every decision became deliberate. Every step calculated. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was directing the outcome. Betrayal had tested me, but it hadn't defeated me. Instead, it revealed strength I didn't fully recognize. I emerged from the storm not broken, but sharpened. Not fearful, but empowered. Sometimes, the people who try to destroy you inadvertently show you who you are meant to become. I learned that night, vigilance and patience are more potent than anger. And above all, I discovered that even in betrayal, you can create your own justice and reclaim your life completely. The past no longer had power over me. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely free. Do you think I did the right thing by cutting Cade and Leora out completely, or should I have given them another chance? I want to hear your thoughts. Subscribe and hit the bell for more real-life stories like mine.